Hello and welcome to Talk Ag to Me, the podcast dedicated to improving ag literacy around the globe. I'm your host, Brennan Black, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. This is Frank Tebeau. Mr. Tebeau.
Good afternoon.
Nice to meet you, or nice to see you. Why don't you start off by, before that, I'll give a brief description. So Mr. Tebeau here is a teacher at the Tulare COS campus, and he'll give you a little bit more of an introduction than that, but I've known Mr. Tebeau for quite some time. He was my parents' ag teacher when they were in high school, and he's taught for a long time.
Long time.
So, he's been a very good source of information for me. I've gone to him for a lot of different, questions regarding agriculture or just school in general, so I thought it'd be good to kind of tap his brain a little bit for some more information on more of the history of agriculture and the history of agriculture education, to be more specific. So if you wouldn't mind, give a little introduction of yourself to our audience here.
Well, it's good to be here this afternoon, Brendan. Yes, this is my 43rd year teaching. Wow. I started teaching in 1978 and was hired at Washington Union High School up in Easton and West Fresno. And my first teaching assignment was with another longtime agriculture teacher and leader in the state of California, and that was Harry Maddox. And Mr. Maddox and I taught together there at Washington Union for 2 years. And my original teaching assignment, I taught about half the day in the shop, and then I taught animal science as well as vineyard management.
Oh, wow.
And being from the foothills of Tulare County, specifically south of Porterville, about what I knew out of vineyards was get the cork out of the bottle. So it was a stretch for me that first couple of years.
Yeah.
I was there for 3 years and had the opportunity to teach also with another legend in the California community of agriculture instructors, and it was a man named Del Clement. And Del and his brother Cal, of course, had Clement Meats for many years over in Hanford. And then I had the opportunity to come back to Visalia and actually teach at Mount Whitney High School with the two men who had been my high school ag teachers. And I taught there for 18 years and had the opportunity to make the transfer over to COS. And at COS, I've had the opportunity to teach almost all the curriculum in agriculture in addition to the industrial arts welding program.
Oh.
I have served as the college farm manager for many years and served 6 years as the agriculture department division chair. So I find myself in my next to last semester before retirement. So it's a good thing you came down by today, Brendan, or somebody else would be sitting here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we were able to catch you before you, retire for
forever.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure you won't stop teaching ag even after you're retired, if we know anything about you. So, all right, well, thanks for that introduction and telling our audience a little bit about, where you come from and what you've done and your involvement in why you're here. Just jumping into the interview, I have a few questions here for you, and like I said earlier, it's mostly going to be about just the history of ag education as a whole, kind of where we started and where we come, and where you see the ag education, I guess you could say, industry going over the next few years, maybe over the next couple hundred years, if we're still around that long, hopefully. So yeah, just jumping into it, why don't you tell us a little bit of a brief history as to the origins of ag education, if you happen to know a little bit about that?
Well, certainly on a national level, it is well known. The history of vocational agriculture education is well known, and it was began at the national level with a federal act that was passed by sponsored by two guys named of Smith and Hughes.
Right.
And this was in the second decade of the 20th century. And from that, agriculture education spread throughout the country. Its original concept was to be able to bring modern farming techniques to high school boys. And so high school agriculture teachers were expected to be experts in their field and to be an aid to the community through the young men of that community. In many communities, especially in the beginning, both in California and throughout the rest of the country, ag teachers were expected to teach at night and actually teach adults in the latest techniques in the production of food and fiber.
Oh, wow.
You have to remember, of course, that agriculture education predates the Green Revolution,
Right.
by almost 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So there was an effort on the part of agriculture to begin disseminating scientific methods.
Mm.
California was an early participant in the Smith-Hughes Act, the very first FFA chapter, which was part of the original act, that there would be a youth leadership organization tied to agriculture education, was actually at Lodi.
Oh.
Lodi had the first FFA chapter and thus the first recognized vocational agriculture program in the state. It has progressed and has been a educational model that, while it has remained very true to its roots, it has changed and expanded over the years to continue to attract young, bright, educated people into agriculture to have the next generation of agriculture leaders.
Wow. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but the kind of, not necessarily the origins, but kind of like the earlier years of ag education and the youth groups began in Virginia, right, with the Virginia Farm Boys?
Correct.
And that's what later expanded to become the Future Farmers of America youth organization. All right. So would it be wrong to say that the roots of agriculture education kind of started to grow a little bit more, or at least were better founded with the creation of these youth groups, FFA and 4-H and Young Farmers and Ranchers and that sort of thing?
It was recognized by the men who wrote the Smith-Hughes Act that what would be the best approach for quality education in agriculture is that there would be a classroom component, there would be a experience component where the student would begin to apply the lessons learned in the classroom for themselves in production agriculture or in the business of agriculture, and that there was a need to develop youth leadership for the agriculture industry and thus the activities of the FFA. That three-circle model is still the model used today, and that is classroom, SOE, SAE, and FFA.
Wow. All right. Well, that's well, I know the origins of FFA. FFA started in 1928. I'm not entirely familiar with the origins of 4-H because I know it's been around longer than FFA, right? How long has 4-H been around?
4-H has been around since the conception of land-grant colleges, which was by Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, what Lincoln and his cabinet decided was that there was a need to do research in agriculture. Certainly in Lincoln's administration, the entire country was an agrarian society.
Oh, absolutely.
But they realized that there was a need for science and educated people to be involved in agriculture. So what a land-grant college literally is that the property that the college exists on was given for education by the federal government, and is still supported by the federal government. In the state of California, the closest thing that we have and the true land-grant colleges we have is the University of California system.
Oh, wow.
That's why it is the oldest university system in California.
Okay, interesting.
And the 4-H, of course, is, we were talking about the 4-H. The 4-H is part of the university's outreach programs.
Gotcha.
In the state of California, it's called the UC Extension Service.
I see.
And the 4-H is simply one of the projects of the UC Extension Service.
Okay. So the 4-H, so it was originally created by the universities as an outreach program. So when did it start outreaching to more younger membership? It's still
from the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So
The big difference between 4-H and FFA, in my mind, is that 4-H is managed, created, offered, and especially at the ground level, all by volunteers.
Okay.
Where the FFA has a professional agriculture instructor who promotes the FFA, teaches the leadership components of the FFA, and helps the students with FFA activities. In a lot of states, that does not include the exhibition of animals.
I see.
If you go to a county fair in the state of Missouri, you will never see an ag teacher there. All animals are shown through their 4-H projects.
Oh, really?
Right. And there are county agents there who are the experts in beef and sheep and swine who are helping the 4-H students. Different models throughout the state.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and I know that other states, whether it be through FFA or 4-H, they have different varieties of animals they can show as well.
Sure.
Like, I don't know if it's true, but I heard in Alaska they show like reindeers. And
I wouldn't doubt it a bit. It would seem logical to me.
So, would you say, which I'm sure that, I mean, this is kind of a simple question, but would you say that the agriculture education as a whole has changed over the time of its creation, that the style of teaching has changed, that the actual content has changed, that the people involved have changed in any way? Or
Absolutely. Probably the biggest thing that has changed is the content. Because, of course, as new processes, new knowledge is gained, well, the very second time that new knowledge is taught, it's no longer new. Now it's old. And so the content of agriculture education must constantly be changing. The emphasis of what knowledge is shared is probably a societal change that the FFA and agriculture education have been a huge success at being able to adapt to changing society. For an organization that was intended for rural male youth, we know now, especially in this state, that the predominant members are still slightly male, but the number that are from rural settings is certainly in the minority now.
Oh, absolutely.
So the type of agriculture, science, technology, business, all areas of agriculture are emphasized more than production agriculture. The FFA and agriculture education in the state of California has its greatest strength, certainly in the last 50 years, has been its ability to adapt and to stay relevant to today's agriculture industry and to today's youth, so that the two can find each other at some point in the 19th to 20th year of a young person's life.
And that's reflected by, well, for example, the FFA changing its name from the Future Farmers of America to the National FFA Organization.
Absolutely.
They're trying to get away from that we're just farmers, label. They wanted to be seen as agriculturalists and scientists and businessmen all working together for a common purpose. So,
you bet.
Okay, interesting. So, seeing that it has changed in the amount of time that it's existed, how do you see it changing in the future? In similar ways, with just, with new technology coming out, they'll teach about that new technology, or do you see any drastic changes to the ag classroom over the next, let's say, 50 years?
Certainly no one has a crystal ball.
Right.
But I think one of the strengths of when the idea of the 3 circles, classroom, project, FFA, when it was created, was that modern agriculture teachers are able to change the delivery of those 3 models and stay relevant. Certainly there will be huge content changes in any education, and certainly no more than the agriculture educators will have to change what they teach today.
Right.
But the model at which it is offered is still one that is probably more unique now than it was at any other time in educational history. My example is that a student could work on an SAE project for their entire school year. The only one that would ever see it, perhaps their parents and their ag teacher. And then at the end of the year, perhaps they would take that project and exhibit it at a county fair. That lesson that is learned by that type of labor and that type of commitment is something that is becoming wholly unique to the agriculture education in the 21st century.
Yeah.
For these projects do not include hours on end in front of a computer screen.
Right.
And they are not a team effort
No.
where, yippee, we're all here, we're all suffering together, we're all winning together. They are individual efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And that portion of agriculture education is becoming more and more unique, but its value is gaining and becoming more and more valuable to a young person's career and certainly to society as a whole.
I agree completely. Where would you say, because like we're talking about, the demographics of the FFA members have definitely changed a lot. We have a lot less rural members than we did before, and there's definitely a lot more girls and non-white males involved.
Absolutely.
It's skyrocketed since
Yep.
1965 and 69. Where would you say we need agriculture education the most then, if we're getting in a lot of the more urban areas?
It's an interesting concept. Where is agriculture education needed more? And of course, agriculture has suffered from its own success, and that is that there is no one left alive in America today that can remember seeing an American starve to death. Therefore, food is plentiful and cheap. And so people's concerns about agriculture and those that make their livelihood from it, those that care about the existence of it, continue to see different groups, even including the urban group of students.
Okay. Do you think that these youth groups, FFA and 4-H and some of the other ones, especially as more young people from these groups are getting more involved in the agriculture industries, do you think that these groups are helping with the expansion and education of agriculture to the non-agricultural communities? Like we talked about with the urban population, that they're becoming more agriculturally literate because of these groups, but do you think the members themselves are actively going out and educating others, like their friends and family, at a rate that matters, the rate that's really going to help with the ag literacy issue?
Brendan, in my career, I know that the emphasis that you just stated, and that is FFA members being ambassadors for agriculture industry, the emphasis on that has increased 100-fold. In the beginning, that was not needed because everyone was tied to agriculture
Right.
anyway. That you didn't have people at the fair who didn't understand at least enough about agriculture production to be so wholly ignorant about it that they were unhappy. But I believe that yes, the emphasis from, especially that I see from young agriculture instructors, those teaching at the high school level, they are well prepared, and they take that responsibility of training their students to be ambassadors for agriculture much more seriously than we certainly did 40 years ago.
Yeah, no, I actually talked about that in a previous episode with my co-hosts back when they were still available to do episodes. Not that I'm trying to complain or anything, but when in one of the first episodes we ever did of this podcast, we had a discussion about ag literacy as a whole. And one of the points that I made to my co-host was we didn't really have an ag literacy issue that long ago because it wasn't that long ago that people had chickens in their backyard and everyone could walk down the street and point at a cow and know exactly what came from that cow, and everyone knew a farmer and was friends with a farmer, and everyone went to they understand where their food came from. Well, now we have people who they literally live not 2 blocks away from a dairy and they don't know where their milk comes from.
Correct. And
it's insane how that can even be possible, but it's just a lack of them taking the initiative to go learn about it, or a lack of the agriculturalist part of educating them properly on what is going on behind the scenes. And it might be a little bit of both, it might be something else coming in there, but
certainly a bit of both.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you see the issue of agricultural literacy increasing, or are we kind of doing a good job of keeping it under control lately?
No, I believe that I believe we are not doing a good job. Agriculture, because it is a science
Mm-hmm.
and a business, tends to live in the world and operate in the world and educate students in a world of facts and figures.
Mm-hmm.
That black is black and white is white.
Right.
And here's why it is. The lab proves this so. And it's not like that sometimes. It's like that all the time.
Right.
What agriculture as a whole, and not just the FFA, and not just the youth, what they need to do, what I believe needs to be done, and we see examples
Mm-hmm.
of how it can be successful, and that is to defend agriculture, not with facts and figures, but with a human face, and reach out to people's emotions. One of the, two of the best marketing plans ever in the history of any product were agriculture products. And the first one was in when your dad was a kid, the popular alcoholic drink was called sparkling wine.
Oh.
And this was carbonated wine. The wine that was carbonated was absolute trash. They'd been throwing it away for years, and finally, one particular family hit on the key. If you carbonated it, then people would drink it. And they named their company Bartles and James. And they hired two actors dressed like farmers that to simply say, and they were very simple ads, they simply were holding the product, and the only thing they ever said was, "Thank you for your support." And people thought that wine, that product was being made by those two guys on the screen who were likable old guys. They never put a sales pitch on. They just thanked people who made Bartles and James the world's largest vintner,
Wow.
Ernest and Julio Gallo. And at one time in the soda pop wine business, they had a 37% market share.
Wow.
Because of that ad. The other great success is California cheese and the Happy Cow ads.
Yeah. No, I agree.
They never show the product.
Right.
If
No.
you notice, and the reason is California cheese isn't better than anybody else's cheese, but the cows here are happy.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah, it's all, people don't care about the facts and figures. They care
It's
about
emotional.
the emotional thing.
And it's very difficult for agriculture educators who have a degree in science,
Right.
and therefore it is behooving upon the training universities to realize that there must be spokesmen who speak on behalf of agriculture at an emotional level, not at a facts and figures level.
I think it's important to speak with the emotional level to catch their attention, but to have the facts and figures there as well. Don't you-
Inevitably.
Right.
Inevitably. But first, if people have absolutely no idea of where their food comes from, the facts and figures would be secondary to them so far as if there was a face of a farmer and his family
Right.
that would be hurt by some legislation that would not improve the quality, the quantity, or the availability of their food.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Which is kind of, like you were saying, it's difficult for ag educators to swallow that pill because, I mean, just most people in general, I mean, like we listen to Ben Shapiro all the time, it's the same thing. Everything that they argue factually. They argue with,
Correct.
logic and reason, but that's not usually the way to go with a lot of people who don't know the facts and figures because, that's not what they care about. You tell them a bunch of numbers, it goes right over their head, whereas you tell them that if you don't buy that farmer's milk, he's not going to be able to feed his family tonight, then that kind of resonates with them. Like,
Correct.
oh, okay, well,
Right.
he needs our help.
Yep, look at the job he's doing.
Right.
Yep.
No, exactly. All right, well, moving on to the next question I had, going back to the youth groups again. I like to get those youth groups in. What role do you think that they play, or what significance do you think they have in the education of the general public, or in the increase of agricultural literacy?
They, the youth groups, 4-H and FFA, and young farmers, young farmers and ranchers through the Farm Bureau,
Right.
The collegiate chapters of agriculture leaders at the college level are they are the soundbite. They are the happy picture. They can be utilized for all that is still strong and good about agriculture as a shining example of success. We've talked about the fact that the education for agriculture students now is becoming more and more unique, and therefore they have a tremendous role to play in supporting the agriculture industry and carving out a place for themselves in that industry. For when we talk about leaders, developing leaders through the FFA, I am not talking about people to take over current people's jobs.
Right.
I'm talking about people that are going to take my job, who are going to do things totally different than I did it, and better than I did it. And that's what a leader is supposed to do. Not simply continue, but to grow and expand, and most importantly, improve upon what has been done in the past.
I agree. And a lot of these young kids or young students coming into especially into the college setting, whether it be encouragement from their current teachers or just aspirations to be like those who inspired them so much, are wanting to be ag teachers.
Absolutely.
Which we have a pretty massive shortage of those right now, so we could use a new wave of ag teachers coming in, which brings me to my next question. Do you think there's a possibility that we'll ever run out of ag teachers?
I do not. I think that the current generation of ag teachers have done such an outstanding job that the reason young people wish to be ag teachers is to emulate them, that they believe in what they've been taught.
Yes.
The challenge is that agriculture education, when compared, especially at the high school level, when compared to other teaching assignments, is a lot of work. And why are ag teachers often the students' most fond memories of high school? Is because of all that extra work. I can, of course, 40 years in teaching, I've had a lot of students, and I know for a fact that not a single student remembers the lecture that I gave on pipe wrenches. But I know that most of them that I took to the Cow Palace for 25 years remember going to the Cow Palace.
Oh yeah, I still hear stories about it.
Yeah. And it's that extra stuff that makes it special.
Yeah, no, exactly. So for what reasons did you want to become an ag teacher?
For the same reason that young people today want to. I admired my ag teacher. When I got into high school, I found my home in school for the first time in my life, and therefore it was a logical career for me to go into. It was not my first choice in career. I had my chance at my first choice. I had a chance to go back to it a couple of times throughout my teaching career, but it was one that I found more rewarding than I ever realized it could be. So I am the typical ag teacher in that I got into ag teaching because of the ag teacher that I had.
Yep, it seems to be an endless cycle.
It is.
One ag teacher inspires another one becomes an ag teacher and inspires another kid who becomes an ag teacher.
Absolutely.
Which I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that's a very
No,
good thing.
I think that it's very unique.
Yeah, no, I think it is too. I mean, how many English teachers do you see inspiring people to become English teachers? Not to bash English teachers,
Right.
I'm just saying. I mean, they tend not have as large of an impact.
Correct.
People usually become English teachers because they have a love of literature or like a love of the English language or something along those lines. It very rarely has to do with he who taught them or she who taught them.
Correct.
So yeah, I think that's something that the ag teachers kind of have going for them is, they have that special connection with their students. Has being an ag teacher, because you said that there was another career choice you had in mind, has being an ag teacher changed your view of the world, of the ag industry, of the education system at all?
Probably more. It has changed my view more of educational system than it has of agriculture. I farmed and have farmed my entire life, as well as taught, and that pattern was very common when I started. Most ag teachers were farming on the side somewhere, doing something.
Right.
But my view about how things have changed, especially in education. I have seen education in California, go from the pendulum swing from every single high school student was going to go to the University of California, and to swing way, way over to that side. And I'm beginning to see it swing back now, where a value in what used to be called vocational education, now career technical education, that the value of its existence is swinging back. It is a testament to my generation of agriculture teachers that there is even agriculture education left in California. Because when I was a student in high school, even when I started teaching at Mount Whitney High School, there were 4 other shop programs. There was a drafting program. There was a home economics program that employed 4 full-time instructors.
Wow.
The only thing left at the high school I went to now in CTE is ag. And why is it left was because of my generation of teachers understanding the political ramifications of what was happening to them and being willing to organize because of the leadership training we had received from our ag teachers, being willing to organize to spread the word that agriculture education had something to offer every student, not just the farm kid.
I see. Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So I have one final question, and it's the same question I ask pretty much all of the guests I have on here. What advice would you give to someone that has a passion for educating others and is pursuing a career or otherwise lifestyle in which they they attempt to increase ag literacy, or they attempt to educate others about agriculture, like we're doing right now with this talk show? What advice would you have for someone like that?
I believe that in any industry, and agriculture is not unique here, that there are jobs, careers, if you will, and specifically careers that have to do with educating the customer base, the society, about what it is that your industry does. And I believe that marketing people are educators. Developers of new products, new ways of doing things, have to educate someone for them to spread the good word. An agriculturalist, a plant scientist by the name of Norman Borlaug, who is nowadays quoted as the father of the Green Revolution. Norman stated that his biggest challenge was farmers themselves, because what he was talking about was doing things differently, and he had to educate them. But that when he got the educators on his side, that the next generation, and he was in the plant science industry for 3 or 4 generations, it was his ideas of scientific applications to the production of food and fiber simply became accepted by young people. If a person has a passion to be in formal education, I believe that in the state of California now are the best training institutions to be teachers found anywhere in the state. If your goal is to be an ag teacher in the state of California, go to school here. Learn hands-on skills. Be ready, be competent at what hands-on skills you are going to teach in the labs that you teach. If you're going to be an ag tech teacher and you're going to teach power mechanics, you should know how to fix it, how to hook it up, how to operate that tractor, that piece of equipment. Not simply have been trained in a classroom, but actually know it. In order to be a teacher in this state, one must have a specialized credential, which requires hours of work experience.
Right.
Those are as important as the formal part of an education background as any other part. Be enthusiastic, be flexible enough to change, understand that your rewards will be tangible, they will be real when they come to you. They're not going to be financial, but the rewards of teaching in a formal institution are greater rewards than the financial side. But get as much education as you can, and by all means, live a life that gives you the experience that you can pass on through hands-on education. And I believe that's it.
All right. Well, I think that was the last of my questions.
Good.
I'd like to thank you very much for having this interview with me.
My pleasure.
It was
My
very,
pleasure.
Informational. And
It was fun for me.
yeah, very educational. I think our audience enjoyed it as well.
Good.
You'd be surprised how many people I have watching that know who you are. And, and when they got so excited when I told them I was interviewing Frank Tebeau.
Good. Good.
All right. So yeah, I think that's it. I'd like to thank all of you guys so much for tuning in. We're gonna have another interview going out in 2 weeks, because we're posting them every 2 weeks now. So this one will be posted a couple weeks after, because I posted one yesterday. Or not yesterday. Last week. No, it was yesterday. I'm so thrown off. I posted one yesterday, so this one will be going up in 2 weeks from yesterday. So yeah, you can look out for it then, and
Fantastic.
I will definitely be
I
letting
look
you know
forward
when
to seeing
it's out. All right, so yeah, once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and don't forget, if you ate today, thank a farmer.